Right. Good morning. YouTube as well as Periscope. So good morning to everyone. Please excuse this line in the middle of my forehead. That's what happens when you wrap your hair too tightly at night. You spend half the day trying to get this line in the middle of your forehead to go away. So I hope everybody is having a great and wonderful day. I certainly am. I have been up just communing with the Lord, and I'm very, very thankful for the opportunity to have the Lord commune back with me. And if you are joining us for the first time, I am your host, Shantae Charles, and this is Daring Dialogues. On Fridays, we focus on healthy, wealthy, and wise, financial Fridays, and cash, capital, and credit. All about either health and wealth, or both, or sometimes one or the other. And today, we're going to keep our conversation going on your score, the insider secrets to your credit score. All right. Understanding, controlling, and protecting your credit score. And we're going to be talking about wealth can't wait. 7 wealth traps that we want to avoid, implementing 7 business pillars, and a complete life audit. So if you are an entrepreneur, you are getting in on a good series as we begin that. And today we want to finish up history of the black dollar, talking about the history of finance in this country and how it was based on the backs of black people, black labor, free labor. We're going to finish this book today. All right. So here is where we're going to start today so that we can make sure we finish it. And then we will continue. I will break open our new book, which is Wealth Can't Wait. And then we'll come and wrap it up with your score. All right. So that way we make sure that we are finishing what we said we're going to finish. And then we are starting what we said we're going to start. So let us talk about reparations, which is one of the things that has been proposed for our country. And also talk banking black, which is something Martin Luther King began to emphasize toward the end of his civil rights campaigning. And I'm going to start there. And then we're going to close it out with words by Angel Rich herself. So if you're just coming in, I want to say good morning to you all. Good morning, Lady Barbara. Good morning, Prophet Jonathan. Good morning, Pastor Ben. Good morning, Lady Judy. Glad to have you all in our chat box today. And good morning to those of you who are watching by YouTube, who are watching by your Twitter feed, who are watching on your laptop, your PC, your computer this morning. So let us begin. Banking black. I call upon you to take your money out of the banks downtown and deposit your money in the Tri-State Bank, Dr. Martin Luther King. In Memphis, Tennessee, on April 3rd, 1968, Martin Luther King delivered his famous "I've Been to the Mountaintop" speech. In the speech, he asked blacks to hashtag bank black, meaning to put their money in black-owned banks. Specifically, King said, we've got to strengthen black institutions. So if you write down nothing else today, if you're a part of the black community, make sure you write down somewhere and put it up where you can see it every single day, in case you don't have it in your mind, in your psyche yet. All right? We've got to strengthen black institutions, black schools, black houses of worship, Black businesses, Black inventors, Black authors. We've got to strengthen Black institutions. So if you are a business person on here, please tap some hearts. If you're a business person, in the chat box, you can put up one of those people with the little hand raised that says, "That's me." All right, so people can follow you. We've got to strengthen Black institutions. I call upon you to take your money out of the banks downtown and deposit your money in the Tri-State Bank, which was the bank there in Memphis. Thank you, Prophet Jonathan. All right. Anybody else? If you're in the chat box, make sure you put a raised hand up so we know that you are a Black business owner and we need to support you. All right. We want a bank-in movement in Memphis. We begin the process of building a greater economic base. After he gave this speech about Black economic empowerment, King was assassinated the next day. All right, I want you to hear that. Hear that in context. He talks about economic empowerment for Black people. He had been talking about nonviolence and those kind of things, but he started talking about economic empowerment for Black people. He was assassinated the next day. So if you don't think this conversation is important to have, I want to remind you of that. Okay? His hopes of increasing Black wealth died along with him. Blacks commonly relied on Black community banks in cities such as Chicago, Atlanta, Richmond, and DC for providing loans, as well as boosting Black churches, businesses, and ultimately neighborhoods during segregation. It was Black banks and Black churches that helped businesses and business owners. All right? So I don't know how we went from helping neighborhoods to demanding $54 million for jets. We'll probably have to go look at where that doctrine came from, which was not out of the Black community, and how it wound up in the Black community. And now people are starting to see the results of that doctrine, and they have some problems with it. And a lot of people have problems with it. All right. Those banks providing loans at fair interest rates to Black people because they were our banks with our money. Now you go put your money in a bank that does not belong to the Black community, and you go in and try to get a loan, and sometimes you'll be outright flat out denied, even though you're putting your money in that bank. All right. So there was power in having financial resources that stayed within our community, because when you needed them, you could actually go to the bank and get a loan with a fair interest rate. After desegregation, money began to flow from Black to white-owned banks, decreasing the value of Black communities. According to Michael Grant, president of the National Bankers Association, representing 200 minority and women-owned banks, there was a toxic side to integration. He says, the financial meltdown of 2007 wiped out 40% of Black wealth in the United States, killing off many of these already struggling community banks that were not a part of the Wall Street bailout. So not only was Wall Street initially built on free Black labor, but when it came time to bail out Black-owned banks, they were not given the funds to bail their banks out. So that's like adding insult to injury. Just 25 Black-owned banks remain in America. And if you don't think that is purposeful, you're not paying attention. According to a 2016 FDIC report, compared with 45, there were 45 10 years ago. Now there's 25. Grant states that at the peak of the banking black movement, there were more than 100. Racial bias in the lending industry remains all too common, despite legislation aimed at preventing it. And we know that recently, the legislation aimed at preventing racial bias in the lending industry this year was overturned by the current administration. So now they'll be back to discriminating against you because the current administration just overturned the protections that would have stopped them from being predatory towards black people. This is why I'm going to keep saying until some of us get it. Racism is spelled Policy. I don't have to, if I'm a racist, I don't have to get out in the streets and protest. All I have to do is just be in positions of power that write policy that hinder your ability to be economically empowered. All right? In 1992, a landmark study from the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston examined 4,500 mortgage loan applications and discovered that black borrowers were twice as likely to get rejected for loans as white borrowers with similar credit histories. And if you don't get rejected for the loan, then oftentimes your interest rate is much higher than someone who has a similar credit history to you. More recently, an economics professor at the University of Massachusetts found that banks in Boston and across the state of Massachusetts continue to reject, listen, black and Latino borrowers for home mortgages at a much higher rate than whites. So when we talk about ownership, when we talk about economic empowerment, when we tell people to buy that home or to get that home or they save up to do so, how can they follow through if they're in a city or they're in a state that does this kind of policy that rejects people from borrowing for their home mortgages? All right. So I know that we hear a lot of blanket advice for Black Americans, but we also need to understand what is going on. That when you've met many of the requirements, sometimes you might still be turned away. So then what do you do? All right. That's the question that really Black America needs to be asking itself. What do you do when you have met the requirements and you're still being denied? The door is still closing. Do you move to another state? Do you pool your resources together and create a community development corporation and try to buy up land and property that way? So we have to think around, or we have to think about solutions around being shut out of certain opportunities. That's a reality. All right. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is now sending undercover employees into banks across the country as potential home buyers. In 2016, the CFPB sued Bancorp South Bank in Mississippi for allegedly discriminating against blacks. In this specific situation, the CFP sent black and white employees to the bank to apply for a home loan. The black person who had better credit was allegedly steered towards smaller loans with a higher interest rate. In the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement, some black banks have seen a recent surge in new bank accounts. All right. And again, we have to understand what is going on. So that's some information about black banks. If you have a black bank in your city, credit union, consider investing. Reparations. We've talked about this before. In 2016, Ta-Nehisi Coates made and published, he published a now famous article called The Case for Reparations. In that, he talked about the bill that Representative John Conyers had set before Congress that they have yet to pass, that they have yet to look at. They actually calculated, because some people keep saying, well, how can we figure out how much was owed? They actually did the calculation just on the U.S. slave labor. They didn't add anything in, but they said that it would equal roughly $6 trillion today in terms of what could be paid out specifically concerning slave labor. All right. And then they pointed out that that figure is equivalent to the 10-year cost of Donald Trump's tax plan, but it's still significantly less than the cost of Bernie Sanders' proposed healthcare plan. So what are we saying? We're saying that it is possible to pay out at least the value of the wages paid to laborers at the time. It is not a figure that they're throwing out that is undoable, but there's a willingness, a lack of willingness to actually do it. So the fight for reparations continues into 2018. And the bill that has been updated is the bill called H.R. 40. It is commissioned to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans Act. They won't even pass a bill to do the study to develop reparations. All right. That's how far behind we are in getting this country to financially acknowledge responsibility for the slave trade. They won't even pass a bill on doing the research, much less acknowledge that they need to pay. Okay? Just want you to understand where we are in the process of reparations for our country. Black billionaires. Fortune's 2002 issue of America's 40th Richest Under 40 included 6 Black people. Throughout the 1990s, Blacks found a silver glimpse of hope in the entertainment industry. Because if you are unaware, a part of the Black codes at one point talked about industries that Black people could go into without, how can I put it? It was industries that Black people could go into without being challenged by going into those particular industries. And 2 of those main industries that Blacks could compete in jobs for was entertainment and sports. All right. So if you ever wonder why Black Americans tend to be steered into entertainment or sports, and they tend to be applauded for going into those arenas, those were 2 of the main arenas historically that Blacks could get a job in and not be challenged because they were earning income through either sports or entertainment. Much of the financial success of Black culture in the 90s and 2000s can be attributed to revenue from music, sports, and television. But also, as we are seeing, that just as they approve you earning money in sports and entertainment, they can just as soon as shut you down in sports, entertainment, and television. I don't even need to mention names because we can look right now in the news as with proof of men, particularly, who have been well known in sports, music, and television, who are now, as a matter of fact, I think in all 3 areas, we got an example. 2 in television. All right. That's Morgan Freeman, Bill Cosby. 1 in sports. That's Colin Kaepernick. 1 right now in music is R. Kelly. Not saying that some of those men's names that I just mentioned didn't have a cause or didn't have cause for being shut down, but it shows how quickly your opportunity to earn in those industries can be shut down. All it takes is a scandal, an accusation, DMX, yes, someone disliking your political thoughts and views, and your opportunity to earn in those industries can be shut down. and sometimes shut down permanently. All right? So understand that if you are betting on getting into the music, the sports, and the television industries to earn your big bucks, just understand the risk and the precariousness of those fields. All right? Because if people want to blackball you, they will find a reason to blackball you, and that will be the end of your money making in those industries. All right? During the same period, blacks made several advances in finance. Franklin Raines became chairman and CEO of Fannie Mae in 1999. In 2001, Kenneth Chenault became CEO of American Express, and Richard Parsons became CEO of AOL Time Warner. Now, I find it very interesting that the CEO of American Express is a black man, and usually almost every place I go, they will say, we take MasterCard and Visa, and most of the time they won't accept American Express. But that's for a whole other show. Seizing this critical moment in history and standing in the crossroads at the right place at the right time was a man named Robert Johnson. Born in 1946, Robert Johnson is the founder of Black Entertainment Television and RLJ Development. He is the former majority owner of the Charlotte Bobcats, a NBA franchise. In 2001, he became the first black billionaire and the first black person to be listed on any of Forbes' world's richest lists. Founding it from scratch in 1980, Johnson sold BET, which people are still complaining about, for $3 billion 2 decades later to Viacom. And this is one of our pet peeves with some of our those of us who build black corporations, and then we wind up selling them off. And then it has BET, or Black Entertainment Television, as the front, but then it's no longer black owned. And then we start getting programming on these networks and corporations and magazines that get sold off to people who are not of the black community. Then we start getting programming that is detrimental and counterproductive to the black community. Then we have agendas that are pushed through these things that have the label black on them that are detrimental to the black community. So my only thing would have been, of course, if Johnson was going to sell BET, we would have loved for him to have sold it into maybe some joint owners who could have still kept it in the hands of the black community. But that didn't happen. All right. So he sold it to Viacom. And I believe, in the last couple of years, people have been complaining about some of the programming that has been on BET. But I did get a chance to see one show, In Contempt, that is running on BET now that is actually pretty good. It actually is covering some of the issues in a very fair way concerning mass incarceration. So that is something that black business owners have to look at, is don't just build up an institution to then sell it off. Okay? Try to focus on, how am I going to pass this institution on to the next generation of black people, right? Much of his success is due to the songs, music videos, styles, and personalities that BET produced from black music entertainers and entrepreneurs. BET was the first black-owned television network, opening an international market for hip-hop music and culture, which we know, I believe hip-hop has just bypassed rock music, I believe, as the top kind of music genre all around the world. Emerging from rap music that resurrected in the Bronx during the 1970s from Caribbean influences, hip-hop was the new get out of the hood card. All right? Hip-hop was a way for people to get out of the hood, get rich. But then again, what is happening to many of them who started in hip-hop, who got rich in hip-hop, some of them made some decisions to begin to invest their money in other things like clothing and all of that, perfume lines, stuff like that. But many of them who used hip hop to get out of the hood were not very wise in investing the funds that they received. The name hip hop derived from DJs introducing rap songs by scratching them on turntables, stopping, starting, and repeating beats. Graffiti and breakdancing also contributed to the growing phenomenon. Oprah once said she knew hip hop was a permanent part of American culture when she saw it featured in a Pillsbury commercial. Yes, because the same people who initially bucked against hip hop have now taken it on as their culture. The same people who said, oh, hip hop is going to ruin my children. As she said, I don't think there's very few commercials you will hear that won't have some sort of hip hop flavor to those commercials now. It doesn't matter what demographic that they're trying to reach with their commercial, there's some sort of hip hop flavored or urban flavored music that goes along with these commercials. All right. So it did have a major impact and influence on business. Russell Simmons, who founded Def Jam Records in 1984, was a pioneer entrepreneur in the hip hop industry. Russell Simmons is now was under investigation to the point where he actually turned over his businesses to another person to run them. He took them out of his name. Again, music, sports, television. His company held some of the major rap artists, helping his company grow to the largest Black-owned music business. In 1992, he produced Def Comedy Jam, helping to produce some of the biggest comedians in the world, including Dave Chappelle and Martin Lawrence. And we know Dave Chappelle left the scene for about 10 years. Yeah. And Martin Lawrence had they said he was dealing with some mental health issues. And so he is now finally making a comeback. He won a Tony Award in 2003 for his Broadway show, Def Poetry Jam, as the best theatrical event. Russell also emerged with other hip-hop innovations, such as Fat Fashions and the Rush Card, both opening doors for trillion-dollar industries that still thrive today. Sean, Puff Daddy P. Diddy Combs, also conquered the hip-hop music and fashion industry with his Sean John label. Damon John helped revolutionize hip-hop clothing with his brand, FUBU, For Us, By Us, grossing earnings of $380 million in 2000. Undoubtedly, entertainment became the major growth engine of the Black community during the new millennium. Fortune's 2002 issue of America's Richest 40, Richest Under 40 included 6 Blacks. Listen, America's 40 Richest Under 40 included 6 Black people, all of them who came from the sports and entertainment industries. So it would stand to reason, if I recognize that sports and entertainment industries are where Black community is getting most of their financial empowerment from, then guess what I'm about to do? I'm just thinking from the other side of the coin. Then I'm going to make it very difficult for you to continue in those 2 industries to gain economic backing to support the Black community. I've already shut down most of your banks. There's only 25 Black-owned banks in the country. Now I've got to go to your sports and entertainment figures that you love so much. And I've got to discredit the ones that are easily discreditable, because their morality has already been challenged. They've helped us out by making it easy to discredit them. And then when I discredit them, I will make sure I take off everything that has their name on it, anything where they can collect a residual income from it, all those shows that they have put out for the last 25, 30 years. I will cut all of the reruns off from them, so they will not be not only making new income, but they will not be making residual income. So I will shut down those engines of economy that was coming into the Black community. Just trying to help us understand. Give us a little the financial perspective of what's going on. Okay? So those 6 Blacks, all from the sports and entertainment industries, are Michael Jordan, all right, Percy Miller, also known as Master P, Sean Diddy Combs, Tiger Woods, and we know Tiger Woods had his incidents, right? Yep. You just go down the line. Shaquille O'Neal, Will Smith, Earvin Magic Johnson, who was 43 at the time of the list, missed it, but had easily accumulated $500 million from his movie theaters, restaurants, shopping malls, and athletic clubs. While Black saw great success, only two of them still stood when Forbes released its 2002 list of the 400 richest people in America. That was Robert Johnson and Oprah Winfrey. Oprah is proudly the first Black female billionaire to become the world's best friend, Black Girlfriend Talk. Oprah remained America's top talk show host for 20 years, establishing an untouchable brand that would move mountains just by the sound of her voice. For nearly a decade, she was named the world's most influential person and still carries great influence today. We saw when everybody started clamoring for Oprah to run for president because of a speech she gave at an entertainment awards ceremony. She is a media conglomerate with companies in film, cable, television, and publishing industry. And in case you didn't know, she's starting to sell more of her ownership in the OWN network now. Her book club literally saved the book industry, as any of her recommendations would immediately become bestsellers. In 1999, her Harpo Entertainment Group created a new magazine, the Oprah Magazine, which features herself on the cover of every issue. This magazine has become one of the most successful in the country. Naturally, she consistently tops the list of most admired Americans. Other Black women, such as Cathy Hughes, are closely behind Oprah. Cathy Hughes is the founder of Radio One. Hughes' network consists of 27 stations in 9 major markets with a staff that exceeds 1,500. In 1999, her company went public with an initial public stock offering that raised $1.2 billion. She maintains 56% control and has grown it to be the 16th largest media company in America. Expanding her reach, she now owns TV One and continues to grow that network. Ernesta Procope is a lesser-known heavyweight. She started her own insurance company in 1952 in Brooklyn. She now has a company that is licensed in all 50 states as the largest majority-owned and female-owned insurance brokerage firm in the country. Her clientele includes some of America's top Fortune 100 companies. The Black hair care market was a $1 billion industry in the late 80s. Realizing the potential, white companies began to compete for business, and quickly half of the market is now controlled by white-owned companies. Chicago-based Alberto Culver purchased the Dallas-based Proline, founded by Comer Cottrell, the multinational pharmaceutical corporation company. IVAX Corporation purchased Johnson Products, maker of the Ultra Sheen hair care line, in 1993. In 1998, L'Oreal bought Soft Sheen Products, that was founded in 1964. Soon, L'Oreal owned 50% of the hair relaxer kit and 62% of hair coloring markets. So while these products started out as Black-owned businesses, they were bought out. Sorry, guys. Soft sheen products are no longer Black-owned. While Blacks only comprised 12% of the national population, they controlled 37% of the hair care market. Only Johnson H. Johnson Fashion Fair Cosmetics remained at the end of the 20th century as a major Black-owned beauty and hair care products company. And then, of course, there was Shea Moisture that was Black-owned, but Shea Moisture just recently sold their company. I forget who they sold it to, but the owner of Shea Moisture sold his company, but then he bought back either Essence or Ebony. I can't remember which one right now, but he bought back that magazine so that it would be in Black-owned hands again. Blacks also thrived in advertising. Uniworld, based in New York, was the largest Black-owned advertising agency. In 1999, Uniworld sold 49% of the company to a London-based firm. Around the same time, Borough Communications Group of Chicago and Essence Communications each sold 49% of their businesses. So it was probably Essence that he bought. Essence explained that its sale to AOL Time Warner would facilitate the company expanding into the Black market to strengthen its presence in beauty and fashion advertising. Due to most Black leaders selling their companies at some point, much of the historic Black wealth has been lost or not passed down. If I seem a little, just a tad annoyed by that, it's because I am. However, in 2015, the founder of Shea Moisture, as I said, the founder of Shea Moisture chose not to sell out and made a historic move. Instead of being taken over by pressures to sell, like other recently Black-owned beauty product companies, Richelieu Dennis, by allowing Bain Capital and Target to take a minority stake in his company, maintained superior control and ownership. In 2017, of the 2,000 billionaires across the world, only 10 of them are Black. 10. All right. Lastly, then we're going to be done with this book. Okay. Trying to get to Angel Rich's final words. I want to thank you all for joining me in reading this book. Please know we did not cover everything in this book. She has a lot of individual stories of different Black Americans throughout history, but I really wanted to focus on the data that was discovered through this process. So I encourage you. This book is only available now in ebook form. You can get it online. It's called History of the Black Dollar by Angel Rich. Closing the Racial Wealth Gap. This is written by Angel Rich herself. Financial empowerment is essential to the future of the Black community. And I don't believe we're going to get to the credit book today, but we will start Wealth Can't Wait. The economic content of the Black community is seemingly missing from the pages of Black history. The racial wealth gap not only hurts Black families, it limits the nation's economic growth and innovation. In America, the richest 1% of households owns 37% of all wealth. I want you to think about that. 1% of America's richest owns 37% of all wealth in this country. This rancid inequality has deep-seated historical roots and continues to be exacerbated by current political decision makers that indulge the affluent. The point of studying the lives and businesses of these heroes is to demonstrate the connection Blacks have always maintained with entrepreneurship and capitalism. There is a strong lie that keeps being perpetuated and going around saying that Black people are not good at business, saying that Black people don't know how to start businesses, saying that Black people have not ever started businesses. All right? And if you just do some history, do some research, you find out that all three of those things are lies. And I want to encourage Black people to stop telling them. And I want to encourage Black people to stop perpetuating them. All right? The issue has not been about whether or not Black people can start a business or are able to run a successful business. The issue has been about catching up. We are behind. And we are not behind through any of our own personal doing. We are behind because we are now thrown into a history that was written before we got here. All right? We are behind because of stored wealth, not because of our current efforts, but we're behind because of the way that this country has stored wealth. All right? I want us to understand that. So if you are a Black business owner, I don't want you to be discouraged by people trying to tell you that your business ideas are not going to be successful or that your business ideas cannot work. The reality is we have much more work to do than other people simply because of the way that this country has been set up. All right? We need the proper support. We need proper support in order to excel. Correct. It's not that we cannot do it. It's not that we have not done it. It's not that it has not been done. The reality is there's a gap that was here before we got here. So we have to work with that knowledge, not a pipe dream, but we have to work with the reality that there is a gap that was established before we came on the scene with our wonderful selves and our wonderful ideas, which means that it is more imperative for us to support our community so that we can help close the gap. Got it? Good. All right. This review is not just a reflection of wealth that was acquired, but also land accumulation, innovation, and influence. A focus on wealth and income and the fine lines of difference in between is important. The financial goals of Blacks strongly correlate with a focus on their family's health and future. Core issues of concern these are core issues of concern across the board with Black families. Education. How much education should my child get? How are we going to pay for it? What avenues of obtaining education is going to be the most financially feasible? All right, there's lots of conversations going on around that. How do I give my child a good start in education from the womb all the way through adulthood, young adulthood? If I don't start early, or if my child winds up in a place or in a school or in a community that has poor schooling, my child will be at a disadvantage. So how do I counter that? That's a concern across the board with Black families. Leaving money behind. If the average net worth of a Black family in this country is $1,700, I want us to realistically think about how many Black families are leaving money behind. All right? Helping the community with the resources I have, the talents I have, the skills I have. How can that fit into my community where I am? And how can I help build my community? Compared to other populations, making charitable donations is a higher priority for Blacks. It's 68% of us make charitable donations versus 55% of non-blacks. So we are givers, for those out there who are under the impression that we're not. The award-winning CNN investigative series Black in America found that 1 out of every 3 Black families are at risk of falling out of middle-class status due to unemployment, overspending, and unexpected financial crisis. Why? Because if you have an unexpected financial crisis, many families, including Black American families, don't have a lot of money saved up to handle an unexpected financial crisis, which means they're pulling finances from their regular bills, which means that throws their household budget out of whack if they have a financial crisis. Financial capability is the capacity based on knowledge, skills, and access to manage financial resources effectively. Youth are most susceptible to financial vulnerability, obstacles to financial growth, and lack of resources. Building skills through education and environmental explorations is the most important key to growing the financial future of Black youth. That means exposing them to financial systems, exposing them to financial exploration younger than 18. Talking 4 years old, 5 years old, opening an account for them, starting a savings, teaching them things about checkbooks, all of that, credit scores. If your child can learn rap songs and how to twerk at 4, your child can learn financial literacy. And I'm not going to say that again. Okay? Throughout history, some Blacks were blatant and unmasked in their expression of hatred towards race inequality, like Nat Turner, and others were subtle with their approach, like Booker T. Washington. Good. Thank you, Prophet Jonathan. Talking to young Black men in middle school about this yesterday. Exactly. Neither approach is better than the other. Both styles are necessary to build a cohesive picture and enforce a specific future of equality. In reviewing Black political economy and alternative economic traditions, Gordon Nimbard makes it clear how much economic thinking has receded in the past several decades. Instead of Black manifestos, calls for reparations, and Black-owned co-ops, contemporary writing concentrates more narrowly on individual accomplishments than on ways that market failures. The concept of economic resistance is rarely examined. So there came into play where we stop focusing on the community as a whole and we start narrowing our view to the few Black people who are doing good and who are doing well. All right? But I'm going to tell you, with the other communities around us, they want to know how well their whole community is doing, not just the 1 or 2. All right? On January 1st, 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation declared that all slaves were now free. Starting in 1961, Martin Luther King repeatedly asked JFK for a second Emancipation Proclamation to end segregation. A 1961 telegram to Kennedy requested a second Emancipation Proclamation to free all Negroes from second-class citizenship in concert with the defense of democratic principles and practices in the U.S. Raise your hand if you knew that MLK asked for a second Emancipation Proclamation. During the 1963 March on Washington, King noted that the Emancipation Proclamation provided hope to Black slaves. The following year, Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. While the Civil Rights Act may have won the battle against segregation, it did not win the war of emancipating all Black people from second-class citizenship. There's a top-down and bottom-up approach that needs to be applied to close the racial wealth gap. Public policy plays an essential role in the top-down part, creating equal opportunity for employment, housing, education, small business, and retirement plans. And by the way, this current administration is stripping all of those areas. They're stripping equal opportunity from employment, housing, education, small business, and retirement plans. Pay attention. The Minority Small Business Office is being gutted. We already see what's happening with education. All right. They're trying to pull more funding from public schools, which is where the majority of Black American students attend. And they're trying to hand that monies over to charter schools, who will be very discriminatory in terms of, and who can be very discriminatory in terms of the students they accept. Charter schools tend to not accept students with behavior problems, students with special needs, students with poor academics, unless that charter school actually focuses on those things. All right. So when somebody says, oh, if we put the money in the charter schools, then everybody will have a better opportunity. No, it will give charter schools a better opportunity to decide who they don't want. And there won't be much you can do about it. All right. So you have to understand what's going on. It must be of the utmost priority to have fair lending practices and fair housing policies enforced across the country. The goal of this effort should be to deteriorate traces of residential segregation, build diverse communities that support diverse people, and form a legacy of generational wealth through home ownership. Stable and increasing incomes is the primary resource for wealth accumulation. The minimum wage should be raised, and tools such as Blender by Stephanie Lampkin that decrease demographic bias in hiring should be used to enforce equal pay for equal work and credentials. Games such as Credit Stacker should be used to engage families in financial literacy, teach credit management, avoid debt, and become financially savvy. Affordable, high-quality childhood development is critical to increasing wealth amongst the masses. Black children are being lost in the cycle before they even finish elementary schools. Prisons are constructed based on the reading levels of Black boys in the 3rd grade. We talked about this on Tuesday, I believe. The National Society of Black Engineers discovered that the math score of the average Black student is a direct indication of their future wealth. Policies that end the school-prison pipeline and more strongly hold the values of ensuring all youth attend college need to be more prevalent. But most importantly, universities must stop raising tuition rates, strapping students from all backgrounds with huge amounts of debt. Inheritance must be taken much more seriously in the Black community. Much of our original wealth originated from life insurance, so we must return to the philosophy of leaving funds to the next generation. Otherwise, each generation will continue to start from a pit that takes nearly half a lifetime to escape from and gain footing on an even level playing field. When comparing the racial wealth gap between Blacks and whites, researchers note that at the current rate, it will take more than 200 years for Blacks to become economically equal to whites. Action is needed now. So she's going to give you 7 keys to closing the racial wealth gap. 7 keys to closing the racial wealth gap. Number 1, equal family wealth. Number 2, equal income for the same level of work. Number 3, having emergency savings stored. Number 4, long-term home ownership. Number 5, reduce barriers for unemployment and growth. Number 6, access to capital, credit, and benefits. And number 7, restructuring community development. All right. So there are keys to closing the racial wealth gap. I've got roughly 4 minutes to get us started in this next book because I'm determined to start. Wealth Can't Wait. Avoiding 7 wealth traps, implementing 7 business pillars, and completing a life audit today. Let's see how far I can get. Building wealth. May the odds be forever in your favor. Effie Trinket. Some people are born on third base. What does that mean? They inherit money, marry into wealth, or win the lottery. And we know that the majority of white Americans in our country, these are my words, by the way, not the book. We know that the majority of white Americans in this country are born on third base. Let me read that one more time. I wanted to sing. The first sentence in this book is, some people are born on third base. But why are they born on third base? We discussed why. All right. They inherit money, they marry into wealth, or they win the lottery. The rest of us must hit base hits and sometimes strike out in our journey to build our own wealth. This book is for anyone who wants to put the odds in their favor. In the pages that follow, we will talk about how to adopt the mindset and develop the skills you will need to empower your freedom, create your future, and build a life worth living today. We're privileged to be a part of an extraordinary company, Keller Williams Realty International, which is the largest, ding, 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 real estate company in the world, with more than 150,000 agents as of this printing. We are Keller Williams' top-selling broker owners, and we join forces to write this book so we can share how you can build wealth in all areas of your life. We've divided our book into 5 parts. Number 1, make the choice to build wealth. Number 2, embrace the mindset that builds wealth. Number 3, create the habits that build wealth. Number 4, develop a business that builds wealth. And number 5, generate the momentum that builds wealth. So right off the board, they're telling you that more than likely, they're going to focus on real estate. Building wealth as opposed to having money go through your hands requires you to make different choices, think different thoughts, practice different habits, and conduct business in a different way. These principles and practices work, and we're going to show you how to implement them so that you can build wealth just as we have. Sounds like all biblical principles, mind, change, and faith. Exactly, Prophet Jonathan. Everybody loves to scorn the Bible, but then they take all the biblical principles, rewrite a book, and people follow it. If you read the scriptures, you're going to hear some of the same words. Building wealth. These two work well together, these words. Your level of income doesn't determine your level of wealth. If you're taking notes, please put that down. Exactly. And they will become a motivational speaker while hijacking all of the book of Proverbs and claiming these things as their own. They'll even put their name after the proverb that they just copied. And people will say, wow, that was a super brilliant thought. And I'm like, wow, that came from the book of Proverbs. They need to take their name off of that and put Solomon. Listen, write this down because we're getting ready to close. Your level of income doesn't determine your level of wealth. If you're not building wealth, then you're depleting it. Just as you can build muscle or strengthen tennis skills or turn your backyard into a wonderful oasis, the minute you stop doing these things, your muscles will atrophy, your tennis skills will rust, and your garden will overgrow. Just like with these activities, building wealth is a process that requires repetition and consistency to build the muscle. It is an application of knowledge of life, that has a built-in feedback loop. When building wealth, you apply your knowledge through effort or investment. When you do this, you produce results and you either win or lose. Then you apply what you learn and do it all over again. Throughout this book, we share the knowledge and tools that will help you create habits that build wealth. Having lots of money alone means nothing. Former NBA star Allen Iverson had lots of money and lost it. Hello, sports and entertainment. Lottery winners have lots of money, and many of them end up losing it. But they could preserve and grow it if they practice the wealth building methods in this book. The real journey to wealth, however, is built upon, listen to what it's built upon: knowledge, skills, habits, and relationships that you apply to money. We will share our journey and lessons we have learned. These are lessons that people can use to climb their own mountains. Our techniques might not be for you, or we might slow you down. This book is for anyone who wants to put the odds in their favor, who wants to build long-term sustainable wealth. It's for the man or woman who says, I want my life to be on track and be amazing, unrecognizable for what it is now in 10 to 5 years. Okay? It's not about winning the lottery or becoming an instant billionaire. This book is about building wealth. It will empower you with a set of skills that will serve you for a lifetime, regardless of the field you're in. All right? So, this journey is yours to take. We can't do the work for you, but it doesn't have to be hard work. It can be play. By practicing what we offer in the book, he says, you will learn to thrive and create the life you desire. Over the years, we have built a lot of wealth, and we continue to do so. We've had things go our way, and we've had things go against us. The greatest thing you can do to increase your wealth, listen, is to further your knowledge of wealth. The skills we share here are not just important, they are crucial to building wealth. In this book, you will find keys that unlock wealth building potential for anyone with the ambition, the energy, and the desire to do so. So, let's get started. All right. So, next week, we will come back and we will begin part 1, which is making the choice to build wealth. And these will be our 2 texts for the next few Fridays. All right. Your score and wealth can't wait. So if you're screenshotting, you can screenshot these now. And if you want to read along with us or you want to order them and read ahead, feel free to do so. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I have been your host today. I hope that you have learned something you didn't know before. I hope it will get you thinking about your own financial health, your own financial life. I hope that you will begin to make better choices and better decisions about how you spend your money and where you spend your money. Hey, I'm a Black business owner too. If you want to support this Black business owner, you can look me up. I am Googleable, and you can support by purchasing music or my books on love, romance, courtship, and dating God's way. All right. Until the weekend, Pastor Robert Charles is going to be back on Sunday. You can join us here at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. He is going to be delivering part 2 of one of his fantastic messages. So we will be back on Sunday. Monday is episode 75, and it will be giveaway time. So we'll be doing some giveaways on Monday. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness. So please go out today and be. Take care and God bless.